Hey,
Yeah, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Been busy this week.
Yeah, yeah. I just had finals. I mean, this was finals week for me, so I just finished up yesterday.
Damn. Yeah, I still have a couple more weeks till finals myself. So
Actually,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Wait, where do you go?
I go to Drexel in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay, okay, gotcha, gotcha. Are you guys on the quarter system or semester
Yeah,
system?
quarter.
A quarter. Yeah, that makes sense then. Yeah, yeah. All my friends are on the quarter system, so unfortunately, I just have to return home like 3 weeks early every year.
Wow.
So.
All of my
Yeah.
friends or people that I know were on semesters. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. We
opposite.
got we got to flip friend groups here. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I think it's because a lot of the UCs are quarter systems. So like, yeah,
Mm.
I think Berkeley's like one of the few ones that's actually semester. But
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So I just wanted to talk to you today about kind of your background, your app, your project, and I've been doing this kind of thing. I don't know if you check my YouTube channel out, but I've been trying to find creators from various backgrounds and kind of talk to them, get to know them, and have some really engaging conversations for people that are starting to develop some projects or they have an idea that they don't know where to begin. They can hopefully listen to some of these and relate to some of them. um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so let's get started with some introduction. So you can you introduce yourself and tell us about your app.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm Nick. I am a sophomore right now at Berkeley. I study CS and philosophy. The app that I'm producing for buildspace, or I guess like not even just for buildspace, but in the past month or two, it's basically called gradewise, but it's this grading platform that is designed to help teachers grade semi-automatically. So what that means is that they can, rather than having to grade essays, quizzes, assignments, like all, if they have like 5 periods, like 30 people per period, 150 different assignments. If they can just grade like let's say 25% of it, and the machine can grade the rest. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is like kind of motivated, I guess, looking at recent advancements in like Gen AI. And so like I was kind of curious. This is also partly an experiment for me just to see whether, first of all, like how effective these technologies are, and secondly, whether something like this could truly be adopted in the school system, because I know that it's very
Mm-hmm.
rigid and like tends to be inflexible to a lot of new technologies that are playing around.
Yeah. So I really like the idea of it. It's kind of, teachers are already overworked. They don't really have that much time to themselves, and grading takes up a big portion of that. So, actually reading through, essays and stuff, that can be pretty taxing on them. Um, so yeah, I followed your demos. I gave you some feedback, um, and I was curious to actually hear you say that you're majoring in CS and philosophy. So why philosophy? Because
Mhm,
traditionally, CS people are just CS in my
mhm.
experience. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, great question. I mean, I find that within the STEM world, there is this interesting animosity towards the humanities. And like, I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? Like, you don't like humanities, you don't like writing, you go to STEM, right? I think that's kind of like the mentality there. Um, I think, I mean, it was just really in high school that I developed a rather like strong like affection for humanities in some way. Like I think I just had really really strong English teachers, and they were people that really pushed me to think and to think critically, right? And so one of my English teachers from high school, I think she's actually like one of those people that it's like a once in a lifetime meet. But like she, was talking like she would always be bringing in incorporating like philosophy into her curriculum, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's kind of where it. like the interest kind of sparked. Um, and so, when I got to college, I really wanted to pursue not only CS but also like a humanities field. There's like which humanities field should that be? I was looking at cog sci, like psychology. I mean, I'm actually not necessarily like set into philosophy just yet. I'm actually like minoring in it,
Hmm.
because I would do want to like still explore other areas. But the reason why I do it right now is just because I think that the field really teaches you how to think critically and like being able to ask good questions. Like, to be honest, like what we do all day long, when I actually think about like philosophy, is that we just spend a really, really long time on simple questions.
Hmm.
And so I think that like, and trying to extract like complexity from simplicity. And so I think that's something that I've learned to appreciate with philosophy. And like, obviously you learn how to write better, you learn how to argue better. And so I think those, it honestly complements a lot of project development as well, or like product development, because like you kind of need those skills to communicate well and like come up with ideas and be able to iterate on them. And so I
Hmm.
actually think that CS and philosophy, like they don't have the same form of interaction as like or intersection as say like CS linguistics, or like CS and I don't know, like astrophysics or yeah, aerospace engineering. Um, but like I think mentality wise, they fit
Hmm.
very well together.
Yeah.
Yeah. CS is
I
kind of like the tool base, and philosophy is kind of like the mindset.
Yeah. My university has a thing called the interdisciplinary problem solving minor, and I'm
Oh, that's
currently
cool.
doing that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if I was just mechanical engineering, I would be like stuck to engineering, science, and math courses.
Hmm.
But I'm like a very like thoughtful kind of person. Like I
Yeah.
took existentialism in high school,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to like lose that or forget that. And I
Right,
found
right.
that it's very interesting to me to
Hmm.
kind of think about you know deep philosophy topics. And if you check out my YouTube, I make videos basically like not engineering, but like more about questioning my experiences and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, just you know making sure and reflecting that what you're doing is actually what's important.
Hmm.
And I find that it's very interesting to see that other people or to meet other people that think in the same way, because I feel like a lot of people are like either all tech or all in on uh, like humanities, and
Hmm.
they kind of clash against each other.
Mm.
But I think the best work is probably done when they work together. So like kind of recognizing the compliments there.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to gradewise, right? Can you walk through the process of the development of that? Because some people are still very new to AI apps. Like how did you integrate it? What programming languages are you using, and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For sure. I mean, first thing I'll say is that gradewise is like definitely an active development.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't iterated on it as much as I would like. But like right now, it's kind of like just a third-party platform where you can enter in a question, a rubric, and then a set of student responses. What I really want to go more towards is actually kind of like, well, I mean, the second iteration right now is actually just a Chrome extension.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the feedback that I just received from teachers was basically that like they have a ton of third-party tools already, or as in like a lot of platforms that are thrown at them. And
Mm-hmm.
so, they kind of want something that's like integrated into their existing tech stack.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of makes sense just because this is kind of like a tiny use case of like like there's a lot of learning management software,
Yeah.
such as like Schoology, um like I know, okay, Aries is a grading platform, no, but like Schoology, and so there are a lot of these like LMS systems that are able to do a ton of things, but just having gradewise be able to like just work in the browser would probably just be a better iteration.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, wait, you were asking just about development in general, or?
Yeah. So for example, integrating the AI, like are you writing that
Oh,
in like Python or JavaScript or yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was actually both. Like my first iteration was actually literally just a Streamlit app that I wrote in Python.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the current one is with React, so like JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's just using OpenAI's like ChatGPT API and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, how did I just heard that you have gotten in touch with teachers? So, how is that experience like? Did you reach out to them like organically, emails, or did you reach out to people that you already knew or had
Mhm.
connection with?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was like definitely a mix. It's actually mostly been cold outreach. Like I have just been sending like a lot of blasts of emails to like people around me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, yeah, like talking with teachers is very interesting. I think that, I've talked to, let's say, like 10 or 11 so far. Um, and, I think has a very, each of them have very interesting perspectives to share. I mean, I've actually cold emailed people and like they've just directly told me like things like, oh, like I'm a veteran teacher of like 25 years and I've seen it all. I don't try like I don't like technology at all, right? And like,
Mm-hmm.
there's like those teachers, but there's also teachers that are very like tech curious and like they do see like value in like integrating ChatGPT into their own classrooms, and there is that sense of like urgency because they do have
Mm-hmm.
really time consuming workloads and need something. Um, so it's definitely been very interesting on that, just like seeing that polarization in some respects.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, but like I really, really enjoy conversations. Like I literally just had two this morning. And it's just really nice hearing their perspectives on this.
Mm-hmm. So, are you kind of targeting a specific type of teacher, like English
Yeah.
teachers or something like that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that initially I was actually going for like math and science teachers just because I know that they're actually, if you look statistically, they're some of the highest like shortage groups,
Mm-hmm.
state by state. Um, but like I think with a lot of the GPT technology, because it works like directly with text, it's kind of just better to like work with
Yeah.
text-based classes.
Mm-hmm.
Because because the thing is like you also have to think about how students turn things in. If it's like math, it's usually like written down. Like students don't students tend to not really like write latex or like write in Desmos or whatever and turn it in.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not how it's done yet. And so, but with like let's say English essays or like even social sciences, right? There's like online assignments and you turn them in through Google Classroom. And so
Mm-hmm.
those are all text-based like forms that you can easily feed into like these GPT models. And so that's kind of like it was kind of like an engineering like simplicity thing,
Mm-hmm.
but also just like a workability because I thought it would literally just work better with these subjects. And also another thing is that with social science teachers, they, I remember one teacher was telling me that um, with teaching history, it's a matter of what to cut out because there's just so much content that you have to get through. And so
Mm-hmm.
and that's like great news for me because when you have a lot of content to teach, right, you have to find a way to test it. But like he was telling me that like it's always like a balancing curve, right, between how much you like, the assignments you give and like the, like how much grading you want to do. Because my point there was just that because there's so much content to teach,
Mm-hmm.
they have to have corresponding assignments or like quizzes that go along with it. But it's always a struggle having to balance it with the amount of grading that comes out as a result.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, one of my teachers was describing it as a like balancing act, and so like that's kind of good to hear from a user perspective because like or like just from a product perspective because like it does show like a need for something that would help ease that burden and like help make that grading a little simpler.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean that was kind of like the motivation to like look out for social sciences in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I did you hear about Conmingo, by the way?
Conmigo, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What did you think about it?
I mean, I checked out the product. Honestly, okay, I'm actually royally pissed that they charge you like $20 a month. Like, it's kind of like I just wanted to try it out, and like I had to pay $20 for that. So, um, I think from what I got out of it, it was basically like a personalized like it's just not even like a personalized, but like it's basically allowing you to converse with like tutors.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, to be honest, when I actually saw it, I didn't actually see like why this was like such a need for people. I thought that people could just like rely on ChatGPT. Like that was my honest like impression. But I'm sure that because like I only like spun around the tool for like some amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But like I just didn't see the type of I didn't see it fulfilling the types of use cases that teachers actually need right now, which is like, that I mean, because even for like creating content, right? Like it doesn't actually produce anything for you. It just tells you like, oh
Mm-hmm.
hey, here's some ideas, right? But like
Yeah.
ChatGPT does that. So I was actually a bit confused like why it was a oh I do remember that it also allows you to like help students or like basically give students like a personalized tutor that they can rely on. So like when the
Mm-hmm.
teacher's, out or like when it's after hours, students can also like use this tool and like it's actually like designed to not like it's like encourage the student along essentially.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I think is like more unique than like ChatGPT. But I didn't think it was like, not like I think it's like a very good step forward. Um, I don't know if it's gonna like really revolutionize that much though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's kind of unique because it's kind of like uh, people have young kids that they don't really have time to like teach at home. Like parents go to
Mm,
work, right? And when they get home, they are either too tired to help the kids with homework, and either maybe they're not educated, like college educated, and they don't really know what subject it is or what's going on with it. um, yeah, sure, they could go to Chat GPT and like try
mhm,
to get the answer. But Chat GPT giving you the answer, it doesn't really teach the methods. Um, so what Conmingo's or Khan Academy is trying to do is like provide the students with a tutor so that they actually learn the skills of like critical thinking. So like even
mm,
when they're
mhm,
doing math or something, they're going to be asked like, "Oh, how did you get this? Why did you do that?" And oh, you made a mistake here, and then they acknowledge it and they internalize it. Um,
mhm, mhm,
I say that because I feel like the education industry, if it actually does pick up this technology, it could really help a lot of people that are underprivileged, or underrepresented, um, because there are students that want to learn, but they just don't have the right resources, don't have the right teachers, and the teachers themselves are like spread thin, due to limited
mhm,
budget and limited resources. But with a Chromebook, you could have access to a lot of additional help now.
mhm,
And
mhm.
my my issue is that like yeah, it just creates a lot of work for the teacher, because now instead of monitoring just the kids, you have to monitor all the kids' chat logs as well. Um, because
Interesting.
Khan Academy, when they did the demo, they were like, yeah, the teacher has access to the entire history of the chat, and it's like personalized or something. And I'm just like, that's gonna be a lot of chat logs, right? Especially if the young kids, they're just gonna like start typing
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
to it, and nobody
Mhm,
has that time to like read through like 200 kids chat every year. Um,
mhm, mhm,
so it's also interesting because grading is also another thing, right?
mm,
Because the whole point of grading, in my mind, is to get like a performance evaluation, I guess, to
mhm.
see how much
Yeah.
content you actually know. Um, but do you think like grading is actually absolutely necessary if you could accurately evaluate like students' strengths in subjects or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I mean, I think grading, okay. I've actually noticed that when I say the word grading, there's like one of two thoughts that comes up. The first is like seeing a grade, like A, B, C, like that, and
Mm-hmm.
like, from the student perspective, like experience that anxiety of receiving the grade. And then there's the other, like the more literal form of grading, which is like writing feedback and like, going through essays being like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you like, this is an excellent, analysis here. Or like going through a math test and being like, good job, you got this correct. Um, I think the first is not like I think the first is actually antithetical to student learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the grading that I kind of like, I mean, fundamentally, grading is just about providing feedback to students, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like about providing a feedback loop where the student provides some, input, and then they see something that lets them know are they on the right track or not. And
Mm-hmm.
so like without grading, it's like the student's just gonna put in like, input, but like there's no guide.
Yeah.
So I think that like when I talk about grading, I'm actually talking about it more generally than like to literally offer you a score. It's like it's fundamentally just about being part of that feedback loop in that sense. So I think it is necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the feedback is a good point. Um, because once you get to like higher and higher levels of education, I feel like
Mhm.
you get less and less feedback because they just
Mm,
at least in my like physics classes that there's just what like 300 students in a 101 class,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
you turn in your test, you get a grade, you have no idea like which questions you got wrong, what subjects they were in. You just know like your number basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, no, I hear you. Yeah. I think it's a little bit different at the higher education level just because there's so many of us.
Hmm.
And so it's like quite literally impossible for them to provide like individual feedback. Um, well, if you go to a smaller school, it actually might be like very possible.
Hmm.
But like for example, Berkeley, right? Like for none of my classes really like provide super comprehensive like feedback. Like for example, like I have to make projects for like CS classes, right?
Hmm.
Um, like I turn it in to the auto grader, and then like yeah, either passes the test or like doesn't pass the test, and like there might be
Yeah.
hidden tests, right? But like there's no one like literally looking through my code and be like, oh, did this well, you didn't do this well, and like I mean I don't even know if like I did it correctly, like if I implemented it correctly, or like implemented the best way.
Hmm.
And so I definitely do agree, like higher education, like you definitely see a lot less of that.
Yeah. I actually have similar experiences taking a couple CS classes.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, they have like an auto grader that like tests cases. So it just runs through your code, and if it works, it gives you full points. If it doesn't work, you get zero. Um,
Mm.
but they actually sent me like just a text file of like which cases it passed and which cases it failed. So at least
Mm.
then I kind of know what broke, but they don't say anything about like what the right answer is or like how to optimize the solution. For example, in like runtime or space complexity.
Hmm.
So that's like kind of annoying. But I guess it's yeah, just
Hmm.
one of the struggles of like university education. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, um, do you think grade-wise should be targeted more for like you know what age range for the feedback to be useful or most impactful? I guess.
I mean, it's kind of I mean it is a tool for teachers, and
Mm-hmm.
so like I guess the feedback that it produces, I could see it being applicable more towards like high schoolers,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like college students. And like I'm saying that also because like I have more experience there, and so like I'm able to like, I don't exactly know what elementary school students, or like I kind of forgot, like what elementary school students like really need to hear, and like what kind of feedback would be best for them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that like one idea I'm toying around with right now is actually to like provide like when I talk about feedback, right? Initially, I had this concession. You literally go through someone's essay, and you're like, this needs to be, like stronger. This can't be passive tense, right? Like, this analysis is very weak, right? Like it doesn't rely on the quote, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think but I've also come to understand that, oh, you could also like provide positive feedback too. Like
Yeah.
you could be like, yeah, because I turn in my philosophy papers, right? And like I didn't even realize it until recently, but like it's nice hearing,
Yeah.
like seeing my GSI being like highlighting a certain part and being like good. I'm like, oh, I wrote something that was good.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think that like I mean that positivity could like be helpful to like both high schoolers and college students. I think that like for the yeah, I mean for the work that's being produced, I think the feedback would probably be best suited there. Also, another thing that I was just thinking about is that when you're in elementary school, this is like a hypothesis, but like I also question how much teachers will be using Chromebooks and like or versus like paper.
Hmm.
Um, I think that like at a high school level, I would imagine that because like I mean teachers and parents may have concerns about, oh, we're putting like technology too early into like the students' eyes, right? We
Yeah.
want them to like write things down. Um and so that's kind of why I envision like digital adoption to be greater in high school, but that is also just a hypothesis.
Mm. Yeah. I asked that question because I have some familiarity with like working with younger kids. So I've like
Oh, okay, yeah.
tutored at like my elementary school, my middle school, and
Hmm.
and a couple people like in freshman and sophomore years of college online. Um, but yeah, like older kids can take feedback or objective feedback much better. So like you know some people like they actually use the feedback, and other
Hmm.
people they kind of just don't care about it, like they just ignore it. They just care about like passing. um,
Yeah.
so it's all up to the individual student to actually accept the feedback.
Mm.
But yeah, positive feedback is a really strong motivator. Like I still remember like my sophomore year of high school, my English teacher was like, "You have very good prose," and I was like, I didn't even know I was writing prose. Um, like I was just writing an
Yeah.
essay, but
Yeah.
that was what like 7 years, 8 years ago, and I still remember it. So that kind of stuff like sticks with you. Um,
Hmm.
but um, since you're like building an app or building gradewise to semi grade it, you could still let the teachers give the positive feedback and have gradewise give the like improvement feedback.
Hmm.
Um, Mostly because like if you're complimented by the teacher that's like you know an actual person and it's genuine, if it's AI that compliments you, I'm not sure that it would have that
Hmm.
same positive emotional
Mm.
effect, right? So if
Mm.
I like feed my paper to Google and they're like good, then I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay.
I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I didn't actually think about it like that, like delineating it that way. But that's interesting. Yeah.
It's a
The one thing that I think about there is that with um I don't know if this is just my personal experience, but I've actually found that my teachers tend to not write like good things, or
mm-hmm,
like they usually only point out the improvement marks, right?
mm-hmm,
Um, Largely because like it's also like writing wise it makes more sense, right? You tend to have like a higher percentage of like things that you did well, or like things you can think of that you did well.
mm-hmm,
And so and like it's just like the individual improvement like critiques that come here and there, and so like that's why like some teachers will just like write it in the comments. Excuse me. And so yeah, I don't know if like teachers would really like want to just focus on the positive things, because like I I I don't know, low key, I think that there are teachers out there, many teachers who actually love criticizing things, like
mm-hmm.
critiquing things. And so that would be part of the, because like also like when you say things like that, right? Like that are improvement remarks.
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you're a part of the student's growth as well. If
Yeah.
you just say like this is fantastic, it's great, right? Like, and then the AI is just generating like, okay, didn't tie it back to the your topic sentence very well. Then it's kind of like I feel like teachers would just feel left out.
Yeah. I get that. People go into teaching to, give back to the next generation and contribute to growing the next generation. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I'm actually a bit curious as to like, because you were talking about before about how high schoolers are able to take in more objective feedback. So
Hmm.
like in your experience working with younger kids, are they like taking in subjective feedback or like what feedback works best for them?
So when I was working with younger kids, I remember like if they made a mistake or something, they would try to not acknowledge it. And
Mm,
if you pointed out, the sometimes they would just deny it, like I didn't say that, in that kind of way. But if it's
interesting.
like
Okay.
written down, right, like I I think they just have a more emotional attachment to what people say about it. So like,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it just it just probably because they're like still developing their emotional systems, and
Hmm.
harsh feedback at a young age. Like the AI, I've found some AIs that have like been really harsh criticizing me, and I felt like, oh wow, this is kind of intense. And I'm a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
objective, logical person,
Hmm.
and I I just don't want unintended consequences for the developing brains to basically, yeah, be affected by this technology.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. I mean, also another thing that I'll say just about the GPT technologies is that I would not consider them reliable.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think that we're at a point now, and I don't know if we'll really be there for a little while at least, where we can just trust them. Like
Mm.
that's why like I was really trying to think of products that like have some sort of like you know ChatGPT is just like the middle layer, right? But you still have the human like definitely involved in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, I mean even with this like feedback aspect, right? Like the when I mentioned the essay feedback idea like earlier, like I don't think that it would work well for just like for an AI bot to like be able to just grade it like entirely that by themselves. Like I was just talking with a teacher this morning and like I think that like it might even just be beneficial to like have the AI bot be able to like just comment things like just do a first pass essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
even that will actually help teachers because they don't need to look as closely anymore, or like because like they miss stuff obviously, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so having that initial set of comments might actually like would be a time saver in that
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah. I that that's that reminds me of a high school language class, because
Hmm.
um, I took Japanese, and the teacher said the most important part is not about your grammar or your speaking accent. It's about whether people can understand the context or understand what you're trying to communicate,
Hmm.
right? Because if you say something like, it's kind of like the Office quote, right? Kevin has a phase where he goes, "Why say lot word when few word do trick?" It's like
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
completely like not grammatically correct, but you
Yeah.
kind of get what he's saying,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that level of understanding is enough. So it would be cool for an AI to just be able to like parse it for grammatical errors and like spelling errors and
Hmm.
punctuation errors, spacing errors, and formatting errors, and then the teacher can focus on the deeper meaning underneath. So like what is the student actually communicating? Is the message you know structured properly? Is the required arguments in there? um,
Mm.
and they don't have to like nitpick the tiny details of like, oh, you missed a comma here, oh, you need a this is a run-on sentence, something like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah.
I
Hmm.
guess Grammarly kind of does that. Like,
Yeah, but what I will say is that Grammarly is also it's not exactly designed to give feedback for essays in the
mm-hmm,
sense that like you use it to write, like you use it to like actively like shape your writing
mm-hmm.
style. And like for example, right, if a certain teacher is looking for what's it called, like active tense, wait, no, is it like
It's
passive form?
an
Oh,
active,
yeah,
yeah,
active form versus passive form, right? Like I don't think like grammar, because like grammatically, right, like passive form is like totally fine.
yeah,
And so like you know I think Grammarly, it isn't really designed for teachers to be able to just like, hey, I want these things instead, like I want you to look out for these things.
mm-hmm,
There's like, kind of like that lack of customization there.
mm-hmm,
So I think, yeah, I actually was thinking that like this bot could also, look at the analysis and be like, oh, you could have provided more depth here, right? Like why is it that that Grace says this in this way, right? Like, um, but I think that like yeah, I do question how well that the bot could actually do, or ChatGPT could actually do that. Yeah. Because like I think something I've noticed just like from prompt engineering is that it's ChatGPT is not autonomous.
yeah.
Like
You have to
in the sense
prompt
that
it.
no, 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 as in like when you prompted something and like okay, let's say that you tell it to like produce a diverse set of something, just like make it different, right?
Mm-hmm,
Um, it'll actually produce like very like similar things, like structured data in that sense. Like if I were to, like say, um, look at the analysis for this quote and, evaluate whether it's like deep or not, or like it's insightful or not, right?
mm-hmm,
And like if it's not insightful, then generate questions, such as why blah, right? Like, I say such as just to prompt an example, but just from that, it just thinks that like, oh, I have to do that every single time.
yeah,
And so like that's what I mean by like, autonomous, or like it's not. It seems to be very like repetitive. I think repetitive is probably a better word.
yeah. You have to be very specific with it.
Specific,
Um,
yeah.
so I think to fix that, you would have to say such as why, but and then you have to add something after that saying, do not start every question with why, like
Hmm. Hmm.
change it up. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Mm. Oh, all in the phase of prompt engineering.
yeah. So what do you expect to have by demo day, and what would your original goal for demo day?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a very, very busy past couple of weeks, because I didn't get as much of a chance to like work on gradewise.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I've actually spent quite a bit of time just like interacting with teachers because like I feel like I didn't understand their concerns very well. And it's like I was showing them the prototype, like that's why I built it in the first place. So I'm hoping, at least by demo day, that I'll have the second iteration, like the Chrome extension out.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm kind of restarting here, um, let's say that I would have 10 teachers using the Chrome extension, or like that they would have graded some assignment, quiz, or essay
Mm-hmm.
with the extension at that point.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's completely fine if you don't hit your goal. Like,
Hmm.
um,
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Bro, some people are hitting like hundreds of thousands, and I'm like, all right, go you.
Very
But like
few of
that's
them
crazy.
though. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Or even like hundreds. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So, do you think you'll continue to work on Gradewise after season 3?
Hmm. Hmm. I will have to see, I guess, like what the traction is. I think that like this is a very, I'll probably like, stay within the education sphere at least, or even just like move on to something else for teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that like this is probably like a longer term problem that I'm interested in. Like I've always looked at the education system and been like, come on, there's something we can do here.
Yeah.
It's a little bit better than what we have, you know? And so I think that, if gradewise doesn't work out, then there's always something else.
Hmm.
I think that, I mean, timing wise, it's also a little bit unfortunate just because like it's almost summer break and a
Yeah.
lot of teachers go off on summer break. And so it's definitely gonna be a lot harder to like find people who like would talk with me
Mm. I mean,
and like
summer
try
school
this
is
out.
a thing. There's probably some.
Summer, but like that's honestly pretty limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. The busiest thing would be like fall, winter. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because like ideally, we see this actually in action, right? Like when they have course loads of grading to do, right? How does this actually do? Like that's why I'm trying to get this out in the next week or so, or the second iteration out in the next week or so, because like right now is actually crunch time or crunch grading time for teachers,
Hmm.
and so it'd be nice to actually have a real test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, you could reach out to some of the universities that that are quota system because they run all year round, right? I know Drexel does. Yeah.
Mm.
So they have like summer courses as well.
That's actually, yeah. That's yeah. I To be honest, I actually have not like tapped into universities as much as I probably should. I think it is because like I wasn't actually thinking of like Google Classroom, like like rating on what that experience is like. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think that I can definitely like look into universities there. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, if GradeWise doesn't work, you can always evolve it into a related branch of education. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
definitely, definitely.
yeah. I I really admire like all the people that are like working in education right now.
Hmm.
I've been actually thinking about potentially getting into education
Hmm.
because
Yeah, you should, you should.
yeah, I'm graduating this year, but I don't know. There's definitely a teacher shortage right now, but
Hmm.
it's also like a very overwhelming position to be in, just
Hmm.
because you know the demand to amount of work compared to like the salary and benefits that you get is not that great compared
Hmm.
to other sectors. Um, and obviously, it's AI coming out and probably a lot of bureaucracy in schools revolving around it. Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I mean, what I will say is that most of the teachers I have met, interestingly, there actually have been fewer teachers that I met that like have personally experienced burnout. Maybe it's like just the like region. Well, it's not like I thought the Bay Area would have like had more teachers, but I actually have found that most teachers they're busy. Okay, like they're stressed, right?
hmm.
Um, but they're not like to the point where like they're burned out per se. Um, well, also maybe like the teachers that were burned out just didn't talk to me,
Yeah,
or
they
like
didn't
just didn't reply to me.
reply.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely a possibility. But yeah, I think that like the vast majority of them like say that they find a lot of meaning in their work because like it's all about building like being able to like have that relationship with students, right?
Hmm.
Like that English teacher I mentioned before, right? Like I still visit her, right? And like imagine that as a teacher and like having your former students like actually visit you and to be able to like see them grow throughout the years, right? Like that's definitely something that's very fulfilling. And I
Hmm.
think for people like it is worth it, given the salary and given the work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's time. So
Hmm.
it was great to talk to you, and I look forward
Yeah, yeah,
to seeing your project grow.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Are
I'm actually a
you
yeah,
are
yeah.
you going to SF in?
Still TBD to be honest. Like I might have a conflict during that time, but I
Okay,
will try.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be
Yeah. Are
there.
you gonna be going? Are you be
Yeah,
there? Okay, cool, cool. Yeah. Yeah, well, if I'm there, we can meet up in person.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Is your YouTube channel going well and stuff?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. I've
Hmm.
done a lot more personal videos recently rather than reviews. This week I've done like a lot of interviews or like casual chats like this.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm really happy with how it's going, and I never imagined that I would be here at
Hmm.
you know this time.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. Yeah, certainly, certainly. Yeah. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I Yeah. Or wait, wait, wait. Like, did you get into it just because you like wanted to experiment with videos, or?
So a couple years ago, I actually started thinking about like starting to stream and make videos.
Oh, okay.
But I got the equipment, and then I was like, nobody's watching. Like I don't like I
Yeah,
didn't feel
yeah,
confident in myself. And
yeah. I
then
get that. I get that.
yeah, at the beginning of 2022, I got diagnosed with brain cancer. Um,
Oh, okay.
and I basically spent the entire year like recovering, like
Hmm.
post surgery. Um, and I during that time I got like really into philosophy. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a guy called John Vervaeke. He's like a professor on YouTube, or I listen to his podcast. It's called the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. I think you'll like it as a
Mm.
philosophy major.
Yeah, well, let
Um,
me write that down.
yeah, so that's that kind of got me like thinking a lot about my life, and kind of like what I wanted to do, right?
Hmm.
So I was like I started writing again. I have a blog.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was like, okay, let's just try content creation and video
Yeah.
creation, and just share what I think. So
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
been quite a ride.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Damn, that's actually crazy. Wait. Yeah. Sorry to hear about the brain cancer, by the way. Like, it's
Yeah,
crazy that like you had um that rebound there.
yeah,
But yeah,
but
it's
yeah,
cool that you're taking steps towards living a very, very meaningful life. So
hmm,
that's good to see.
yeah.
Yeah.
But all the best to you, and hopefully I'll see you. But if not, I'm always on Twitter. Maybe not
Yeah.
24
Abs-
7, but if
Okay.
you
Yeah, I get that.
chat, I'll respond. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, nice to meet you, Kevin.
yeah. Nice to meet you too.
All right, see you, dude.
See you.